if we go back to the Robert Kubica, it's that kind of mentality of never giving up. I had this impossible challenge in front of me to get back in the car. I was told I'd never race again or anything like this.
That was the first diagnosis by doctors.
The first thing they said is walking, would be, we need to see about this, because initially I could feel my leg, and after a few hours I lost all feeling, and the issue was a part of my vertebrae hit the spinal cord and in my back, so it was taking away this feeling, and it's very dangerous because if it was too much, I could maybe never walk in my life again.
Cześć, Tomek Ziemiński, oglądacie program Moc Marzeń i to jest druga część spotkania z Romanem Bilińskim. Pierwszą część poświęciliśmy na rozmowę o sporcie, na różnego rodzaju wyzwania, trochę rozmowy o korzeniach, o kwestiach rodzinnych. Teraz będziemy koncentrować się bardziej na wsparciu, motywacji, podnoszeniu się po upadkach. I pierwsze pytanie, które przychodzi mi na myśl, to od czego Roman często zaczyna swoje wypowiedzi, to jest od słów zachwytu nad Robertem Kubicą, który miał przecież ciężkie chwile w swoim życiu, ciężkie przypadki, ciężkie wypadki, po których jednak wracał, czasami chyba nawet silniejszy, na pewno mentalnie, do motorsportu i pokazywał wielką klasę. I co ciekawe, Roman też ma za sobą taką historię z ubiegłego roku. Roman, I would like to ask you about Robert Kubica one more time, because in many interviews you underline that he is one of your two biggest idols. What is the biggest impression that comes from Robert Kubica for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've said a few times, just the fact he's been through so much difficult times and how he perseveres and never gives up and always rises and shines above these difficult moments. And that main thing is he just has that mentality of never giving up, and I think that's something very inspiring.
I just realized that your story is a little bit similar to the story of Robert Kubica because of your accident from June 2024.
Yeah, and it was a really difficult time, to be honest. After the accident, you wake up in hospital, and at that moment there's just so much adrenaline in your body, and you're a bit confused if this is reality or not, and soon you understand, unfortunately it is. And it's a difficult moment because I lost all feeling in my left leg, so I wasn't able to, I had no strength, I couldn't feel anything at all, and so they had to do an emergency surgery as it was getting worse and worse. And it was one of those things I was told walking again would be something very difficult, and I had to learn to walk again, which was really painful, difficult, while having the pain in my back, because straight away I wanted to drive again, and I understood this is not possible, but I couldn't give up. And if we go back to the Robert Kubica, it's that kind of mentality of never giving up. I had this impossible challenge in front of me to get back in the car. I was told I'd never race again or anything like this.
That was the first diagnosis by doctors.
The first thing they said is walking, would be, we need to see about this, because initially I could feel my leg, and after a few hours I lost all feeling, and the issue was a part of my vertebrae hit the spinal cord and in my back, so it was taking away this feeling, and it's very dangerous because if it was too much, I could maybe never walk in my life again.
So it was getting worse and worse during the time.
Exactly, and this is why they had to do the emergency surgery straight away. Because originally they were planning to wait a few days. And, afterwards, I could just think about getting back in the car and never giving up and racing again. And it didn't matter what pain I went through, I made sure I was working as hard as possible. And it's just something that's really difficult, you know. Every time I would try to stand up or just sit like this, I'd be crying because it's so painful. And, you know, the bones are still broken and very fragile. And it's something that was very difficult.
What saved you then? What saved your motivation then?
I saw this video of when I was maybe like 4 years old, and it was, I don't know, it was just me playing around, doing anything, and I looked back at that and said, that little boy had this dream of one day being in Formula One and being a world champion, and I'm not gonna let that stop because of my back, you know? And that's that little boy's dream, which is me, forever. And if I got to 30 or 40 years old and I'm not in Formula One, and I know I could have done more and I could have pushed myself to a higher limit and I didn't, I would never forgive myself. So every day, every hour, every minute I was working, going through the pain. I didn't care how much pain, but I did everything for my back.
Wow. So you are very ambitious, and could you just explain how you did it? Did you achieve it by physical exercises or mental training?
Both physical and mental. I was told to lie down and I wasn't able to move for 2 months. They told me, just lie down and do not move, because the problem was I was still at risk of being paralyzed. Because what happened to one of the vertebrae, it wasn't a clean break, it shattered. And there's fragments still around the spinal cord, which is very dangerous. And so I needed to stay lying down and be very safe and make sure I don't risk anything. So let's say the stupid part of me ignored this, didn't listen to any of this. And the first day I got home, I tried to walk on a treadmill, and it was not a good idea. I was crying straight away because walking, it was my first time and was very difficult. But I had to do it. I just had to do it because in my mind I had no choice. I have to give everything for this. This is my life, this is my career, it's my dream. And I'm not gonna give up. And so there's the mental exercise of pushing yourself to this limit, knowing if I do something wrong, I will never walk again. And is it worth it, you know? Taking this risk to get back in a car, to race, to maybe never walk again. And it's the risk I took. And 100% in the long term, when I'm older, I've done a lot of damage. 100%, because I was doing things that I should not have been doing. Not even now, I should be how I am. But it's one of those things, you know? I took the risk.
It's interesting and it's an amazing story because you just proved that sometimes it's better to listen to the stupid part of yourself.
Exactly. Like I said, it's one of those things. If in a few years I wasn't where I wanted to be, and the little boy, the little Roman, his dream wasn't fulfilled, and I know in myself I could have worked harder and I didn't, I could never forgive myself. In my opinion, I have one shot at this life and I'm gonna do everything possible I can do. That's how I do it. Then, you know, whatever there is after, it is what it is. But I want to go with a mentality that I have one shot and I will do everything possible.
You got one shot, like in Eminem's song,
Exactly.
Lose Yourself. Did that accident influence somehow on how you started to drive after recovery?
I came back to Imola 3 months after the accident, which was, now I can say because I've gone past it, way too early.
Yeah.
and it was against all doctors' advice. And
All of them were saying that this is the end of this season for you, for sure.
well, they were saying it's the end of racing for me, not just this season, the
Yeah.
end of anything, you know, any type of sport. It was a really bad break. And I came back to Imola 3 months later in extreme pain. I needed help getting in and out of the car. I was crying every time I press a brake or turn the steering wheel. I cannot describe the pain. And my approach was a little bit different in the racing because I was still at risk of being paralyzed. You know, one big bump or one bad thing, you know, that was it. That would be myself finished for my life, walking. So I'd say racing-wise, I was a little bit safer, but on that quali lap, I still gave everything, and it didn't matter the pain, I had to do it.
But racing-wise, pay off you by giving points in every single race that you compete last year after coming back on the track. So congratulations, because you can manage this risk so wisely. So you were so clever driver then. And did you find something positive in that accident? I know we talk about accident, which is tragical thing, but did you find something as a result?
I think the accident showed me a part of me which I believed in deep down in myself, but I had never quite shown yet. It was a difficult thing, but I was actually able to show that real never give up mentality. Because, you know, you can go to the gym and you train hard and you don't give up in the gym and things like this. But to do it every day, every minute, every hour with the risk of what I had, that showed a part of me to myself, which I thought, like, good on you, Roman, because you're doing something which is stupid, but it's for your dream, it's for your life, and it's that little boy's dream.
You just change your mentality and make it stronger as a hero. Did you think about the death?
It's something in the back of your mind that's always there, which maybe wasn't there before. And it's opened up a reality of, you know, as a racing driver, we think on track we're invincible and we go as fast as we can and we don't think about anything else. And it opens up that reality, you know, when I went back to Imola and you go through a corner and you think, wow, the wall is right there. You know, you have that feeling of if something goes wrong. For sure, I have more in my head like, what if, you know, my brakes fail now? Or what if someone hits me now? But it's something I had to work on because it was something initially. I've worked on it and I'm back to, you know, being in that racing mentality where I will give it everything, and that's what I will do. I can't now think, what if that happens, or what if this happens? I need to be 100% focused on my lap, do the best job I can do. If something happens, it happens, I deal with it then. But I can't be thinking now, this is a bit dangerous or something like this.
Mm-hmm. You work every day with a lot of people like mechanics, engineers, and all racing staff. Do you have your own psychologist?
Yes, I have mental coaches, and I had to work with him a lot after the accident, as it was a very difficult thing to go through. It was, like I just said before, it's difficult, you know, to get back in from an accident in a road car to get into a race car, go 3 times the speed and be fast. But it was something we worked on, and, you know, we got back to Imola, performed extremely well, and got points in both races.
So tell me, how important is mental training in motorsport in general?
I would say it's one of, if not the most important thing, because at the end of the day, it's your brain that drives the car, you know? Okay, you need to be physically fit, of course, because it's a very high demanding sport. But your brain is what drives the car. Your brain is the thing to say, okay, now I need to brake. Now I need to turn. Now I need to do this, or to feel everything. And it has to do that while coping under pressure, like immense stress. All of these things combine together. And if you're not mentally strong, you won't last in this sport. It is so demanding. You have, you know, just to go back, we have sponsors paying so much money. You have people relying on you, a team, your family, fans, supporters. You have yourself, that boy who had a dream to one day get to F1. There's so much pressure and so much you have to deal with. And then that's just the outside stuff. Then on the track, you know, you need to tell yourself, now I need to brake this much later, or now I need to do this, and you have to drive the lap. While having all of this, I think it's a incredibly difficult thing.
For sure. And do you have some specific, some exact techniques how to deal with the stress, how to cope with problems, how to rise? Maybe your psychologist advised you some techniques that you can tell us.
You know, meditation is something that's definitely helped. You know, you have those times where you have doubts in yourself. You have those times where there's too much pressure, too many things are coming into your head and you can't control it and your head's going crazy. You just need to, you know, sit, try and think about nothing. And it's, you know, breathing through the stomach is really important. And just focusing on, you know, maybe counting to 3 or counting or thinking just about your breath to clear your mind. And I think it's something really important because not just for motorsport, but in general, there's so many things now that can get in someone's head. Social media, I think, is now crazy. You can open the phone and you don't know what you're gonna see.
Yeah.
And you can, so many different things can go into your head and you have to manage that because it could be a bad thing, it could be a good thing, you just don't know. And then as a racing driver, you have the same, but with all the other stuff. So it's managing these, staying calm, breathing, and just getting through it.
That's nice advice. You know, when I see you, I see a young guy who is very brave, courage, and self-confident. I just wonder if you had even one moment in your life when you wanted to quit, when you wanted to give up.
Yes, I've had more than one moment. There's lots of times where I thought it's tricky because I've always believed in myself and I've always believed I really do have the talent to get to Formula One. But with how much sacrifice there is, of course I thought, you know, is this worth it? Is it worth me taking away from other people's lives? Is it worth the money, the time, the blood, the sweat, the tears that goes into this, you know, for a small chance? It's not a guaranteed chance. And it's one of those things that, you know, to be honest, we have to be selfish. And even if we don't want to be, and hopefully one day, if I do get there, I can pay everyone back, not just with money, but my time, give them their time, freedom, and give them an incredible life. But it's definitely one of those things.
Do you have any special sentence that you tell to yourself to be more motivated?
I would say to be more motivated, No, but what I tell myself a lot, and especially before I get in the car, is believe in your ability. Believe in yourself as a person. Because it comes down to, I know how hard I have worked, and I would like to say I've gone through a lot of things, and I've worked, in my opinion, harder than anyone. I've worked so hard to get to where I am. And it's that thing where I just tell myself, believe in your ability, believe in yourself as a person, do the best job I can do. And as long as I do the best I can do, whatever the result is, that's it, If I do the best I can do and it's P1 first, incredible. But if I also do the best possible job I can do and it's P10, I've done my best. And then we go back, we learn, and we try to improve. It's one of those things, but just keep believing in yourself, because I really think, not just in motorsport, but anyone in general life, there's so much ability that people can do. There's so much that people can achieve. They just need to believe in themselves. And it's something that I don't see enough of, and I need to learn to do it better. Everyone can do it better. So it's something like this.
Have you ever gone beyond the limits?
100%. I think that's a thing in motorsport. You have to push beyond these limits to know where the limit is. A few times you end up in the wall, and
Like me today.
yeah, exactly. But you found the limit.
Yeah, don't compare the speed of my meeting the wall. It was like 20 kilometers per hour, or maybe.
But you find the limit, so it's good. But no, it's one of these things. As drivers, we always have to be on that limit, because if you're over it, you make a mistake and you're far down the timing. If you're under it, you're far down the timing. You always have to be there. And it's something that is so difficult in competitive sports, You look at the timings in Formula 3. 1/10 of a second can be 10, 15 drivers. 1/10 of a second. It's faster than you can blink. And there's 30 drivers going round a track at 300 kilometers an hour within 1/10 of a second. When you think about it like that, it's so crazy, So you always have to know that limit, be on it, and explore it.
Are you afraid of something? And if so, what is your biggest fear in racing and in general in life as well?
I would say not living up to my full potential.
This is for life general.
Life in general, and I guess it's for racing. I'm not scared of hitting a wall. I'm not scared of trying a corner flat out and, risking myself, That's part of the sport we're in, and I will always push those boundaries as you would as a racing driver. But the bit that scares me is not living up to that full potential. Like I said before, in my opinion, I have one shot at this. And if I waste that, and this was my only chance, not just in racing, but in life, I couldn't think of something worse.
And do you think failure can help to grow? Is it necessary to grow?
Yes, 100%. And like lots of people have said, you learn the most losing, and I completely agree. I think it's something that's very difficult to turn around that mentality after you do lose and say to yourself, no, I'm going to keep working because I want to win. And I'm going to win. To turn around that mentality is already winning. And then to learn to improve on those mistakes is just another thing.
And what is the biggest lesson that motorsport can teach you?
I would say you have to maximize that opportunity every time it comes. Because you never know when your chance or your opportunity will come, but when it's there, you have to be there and you have to take it. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And it's a quote I love. It's, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You know, if you never go that extra bit, if you never take the risk, you never know what could be. And it's one of those things, always keep trying, always keep pushing, challenge yourself, challenge others, build together, build as a team, build yourself. And eventually, even though it may be really tough and you go down, if you keep getting back up, it will get better.
That's incredible how 21-year-old guy can be mature with his thoughts, with his analyzing life, and how prepared you are to the life that sometimes 40, 50-year-old people doesn't understand what you understand, what you already understand, and what you're talking about. Sometimes when you have interview to a job, to a normal job, a CEO in some office ask you, where do you plan to be in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years? I will ask the same. Where you plan to be in the next 5 years and 10 years?
So of course the dream is to be in Formula One.
This is for 5 years.
This is for 5 years.
I think it should be for at least 2 years.
I would like it to be sooner, but let's say I want to be a Formula One world champion. If you told me right now I would only get to Formula One, if you could see my future and you told me I'd only get to Formula One and I wouldn't be a champion 100%, I wouldn't do it. I'm in this to win. I'm in this to give everything I have, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to be competitive and win championships. That's what I want out of motorsport. It's not, you know, for the celebrity life or anything like this. I will risk everything. I'll do everything, but I want to be a champion.
We're slowly going to the end of our meeting, and it's a shame because conversation with you is so kind of pleasure that I don't have very often, you know, and it's not being gentle. It's true what I'm saying right now. What advice could you tell to young people that are chasing their dreams, and what kind of advice you can give to people who hesitate, who don't believe in themselves?
I'd say one thing which I've learned recently is, for example, I don't believe in luck. And what I believe in is you have to make your own luck. You have to be the one that's going to go out and make those opportunities happen. And then when they do happen, you have to be there. But it's a difficult thing with giving up and keep pushing, because sometimes you can keep improving, keep trying to be better, but everything can still be going worse. And it's something I've had in my life, you know. Last year, just as we started to win a championship, the Freca season starts, everything goes better. You get hit with this massive bombshell and you go back to zero, if not minus. And you have to think to yourself, I just cannot give up, because lots of people have it really tough, much tougher than I do. And there'll always be someone that has it more difficult. And you have to think how lucky I am to have a life on this beautiful planet, and never give up and just keep chasing your dream, because it's going to be difficult. You're going to get difficult days, weeks, years, hours, if tens of years. But it's one of those things, you just keep striving and eventually it will happen. But you can't let anyone say no. You can't let anyone put doubt in your mind, because you are you, and you know how you feel, and you know how good you are, and this is what you have to do.
You know, During this interview, I just realized that you are not only very fast guy, very good racing driver, and still improving sportsman, but you are also very good person with very good heart, you know, and we need it for today's world, for these times. We need people like you. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, I have a present for you.
For me?
Yes, if
This
I.
helmet?
Maybe not this one, but in the future, who knows?
What you have?
This
is the
for you.
racing suit.
This is a racing suit. So this is for you, and thank you very much for having me and everything.
Oh my God. What a wow! What a nice surprise! This is racing suit from your previous team, not Rodin,
Yes.
where you are driving right now, but from Trident. Wow, Roman Biliński, original racing suit. You know, Roman, I have an idea. What can I do with this? If you please don't be offended, don't feel offended, but I would like to give it this suit to an auction for charity.
I'd love that. That's really nice.
So we both agree for that.
100%.
100%. Let's quit this interview with jiggling balls one more time. I have to try to jiggle even 2 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Let's do it.
A few moments later.
So we have balls again, and let's try to do that.
okay. It's not gonna go well.
3, 2, 1, start. Come on, it wasn't even a second. How you do this?
Now it's okay. Now it's better than before, but
Oh,
I'll
come
try
on.
and-
I lost my balls after 1 second. Oh, come on. And it was like 10 or 15 seconds, even more. Thank you. Dziękuję, Roman, za ten wywiad. Bardzo dziękuję. To było wspaniałe spotkanie.
dziękuję.
Kochani, to był Roman Biliński, nasz jedynak w Formule 3. Oglądajcie jego występy. Jak słyszeliście w tym wywiadzie, to nie tylko świetny kierowca wyścigowy, najwyżej sklasyfikowany z polskich kierowców w tym momencie, ale to również fantastyczny młody człowiek z wielkimi nadziejami, z wielkimi pasjami, z wielką wiarą. To jest człowiek, który może inspirować i właśnie takich ludzi chcemy oglądać częściej i będziemy oglądać częściej w programie Moc Marzeń. Tomek Zimiński, dzięki, do zobaczenia następnym razem.